The sun was dipping low over the Malibu hills, painting the highway in shades of orange and pink, but all I could feel was the sharp, twisting pain in my side. It had been building for hours, like someone was slowly turning a knife in my gut, but I didn't say anything about it during the drive. My wife was in the driver's seat of her Rolls-Royce, her manicured hands gripping the wheel tighter than usual, her jaw set in that way that told me she was holding back a storm. Her brother, sprawled in the back seat, was scrolling through his phone, muttering about his latest sponsored post not getting enough likes. 6 years of marriage, and I learned to keep quiet when they got like this, tense, ready to pick a fight. But today, something in me broke. I couldn't take it anymore. Not the pain in my side, not the way they treated me like I was some stray dog they'd let sleep in their mansion out of pity. We'd been at a family brunch earlier, one of those fancy affairs at a cliffside restaurant where everyone smiled for the cameras but whispered venom behind their menus. Her brother had been on a roll, louder than usual, tossing insults my way like they were appetizers. "You're a low-class embarrassment," he'd said, smirking over his mimosa. "She should have left you in that community center where she found you." The words hit harder than they should have, maybe because I was already feeling off, my stomach churning, my head foggy. I'd spent years swallowing comments like that, for her sake, for the life we'd built together. But this time, I pushed back. "You're a grown man living off your sister's fame," I said, my voice low but steady. "At least I've got a spine." The table went quiet. Her parents stared at me like I'd spilled wine on their legacy. She didn't say a word, just gave me that look, the one that said I'd pay for it later. Now, on the highway, the silence in the car was heavier than the pain clawing at my insides. I shifted in my seat, trying to breathe through it, but every movement made it worse. She glanced at me, her eyes cold, like I was a stranger who'd wandered into her perfect world. "You shouldn't have said that," she finally muttered, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You embarrassed me in front of my family." I clenched my jaw, the pain spiking as I tried to sit up straighter. "They embarrassed themselves," I said. "I'm tired of being your punching bag." Her brother snorted from the back seat, not even looking up from his phone. "Ungrateful," he said, like it was my name. "You'd be nothing without her. You know that, right?" I wanted to turn around and tell him to shut his mouth, but the pain was making it hard to think straight. My hands were shaking now, sweat beading on my forehead despite the air-conditioned chill of the car. She pulled over suddenly, tires crunching on the gravel shoulder of the highway. The car stopped so fast I had to brace myself against the dashboard, the jolt sending a fresh wave of agony through my side. "Get out," she said, not looking at me. Her voice was flat, like she was ordering a coffee she didn't really want. I stared at her, waiting for her to take it back, to laugh it off like she sometimes did when she was mad. But she just sat there, staring straight ahead, her lips pressed into a thin line. "What?" I managed, my voice hoarse. The pain was so bad now I could barely focus on her face. "You heard me," she said. "Apologize to him, right now, or get out." Her brother leaned forward, smirking like he'd just won a bet. "Yeah, say you're sorry, or you're done," he added, his voice dripping with glee. I looked at her, searching for something, anything, that reminded me of the woman I'd married. The one who used to laugh with me over late-night pizza, who'd cry on my shoulder when the world felt too heavy. But all I saw was a stranger, her eyes hard, her fame like a wall between us. My side throbbed, my vision blurring at the edges, but I forced myself to speak. "I'm not apologizing," I said, each word a struggle. "Not to him. Not to you. If you want me gone, fine. But I'm not begging." Her brother laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. She didn't move, didn't blink. "Then leave," she said, her voice so cold it felt like a slap. I waited for her to change her mind, to remember who I was to her. But she just pointed at the door. "Now." My hands fumbled with the seatbelt, every movement sending fire through my gut. I didn't know what was wrong with me, didn't know my appendix had already burst, poisoning me from the inside. All I knew was the pain and the betrayal, both burning hotter than I could stand. I opened the door, the warm coastal air hitting me like a wave. "You're making a mistake," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "You think you can just erase me? I'll make sure the world knows who you really are." She laughed then, a short, bitter sound. "You're nobody," she said. "No one's going to believe you over me." Her brother chimed in, still grinning. "Go crawl back to your nothing life, man. You're out of your league." I stepped out onto the gravel, my legs barely holding me up. The pain was unbearable now, like my body was screaming at me to lie down, to give up. I leaned against the car for a moment, clutching my side, trying to breathe. "You're wrong," I said, forcing the words out. I'll call the news. Right here. Right now. They'll listen. She rolled her eyes, already reaching for the gear shift. Good luck with that, she said, and before I could say anything else, she hit the gas. The Rolls-Royce peeled away, kicking up dust that stung my eyes. Her brother's laughter echoed through the open window as they disappeared down the highway, leaving me alone. I sank to my knees, the gravel biting into my skin. The pain was blinding now, my vision spotting black. I didn't know how long I could stay conscious, didn't know if anyone would stop for a guy like me, just another nobody on the side of the road. But I wasn't going to let her win. Not like this. I pulled out my phone, my hands trembling so bad I could barely hold it. I didn't call for help. Not yet. Instead, I scrolled to a number I hadn't used in years, a reporter I'd met at a volunteer event, someone who'd always seemed hungry for a real story. As the pain dragged me toward darkness, I hit dial, knowing this call would change everything. The gravel under my knees felt like 1,000 tiny knives, but it was nothing compared to the fire in my gut. I was hunched over on the side of the Malibu highway, my phone pressed to my ear, the dial tone buzzing like a lifeline. The sun was sinking fast, turning the sky a bruised purple, and every second I stayed conscious felt like a fight I was losing. My shirt was soaked with sweat, my hands shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. I didn't know what was wrong with me, didn't know my appendix had burst, that time was slipping away faster than I could hold on to it. All I knew was the betrayal, her words still ringing in my ears. You're nobody. She thought she could leave me here to disappear, like I was just another mess her team could clean up. But I wasn't done. Not yet. The call connected, and a woman's voice came through, sharp and curious. Talia Green, Channel 7 News. Who's this? I tried to speak, but the pain stole my breath, turning my words into a gasp. It's me, I managed, my voice rough. From the community center. Years ago. You said, if I ever had a story, I trailed off, wincing as another wave of agony hit. There was a pause on the line, and I could almost hear her flipping through her mental Rolodex, trying to place me. The volunteer guy, she said finally, her tone shifting, like she'd just caught the scent of something big. What's going on? You sound bad. I forced myself to sit up straighter, the gravel crunching under me. I'm on the side of the road, I said. My wife, she left me here. I'm hurt. Bad. I need you to come. Bring a camera. I didn't have to say her name. Talia knew who I was married to, everyone did. The singer with the golden voice, the face on every magazine cover, the woman who could sell out stadiums in minutes. I could hear Talia's breath catch, the sound of her grabbing her keys already coming through the phone. Where exactly are you? She asked, her voice all business now. I squinted at the highway sign a few yards ahead, the letters blurring in my vision. Pacific Coast Highway, I said. Mile marker. 42, I think. Hurry. I don't know how long I can. My voice cracked, and I stopped, not wanting to admit how close I was to passing out. I'm on my way, she said. Stay awake. Keep talking. Tell me what happened. I leaned back against a rock, trying to focus on her voice instead of the pain. We were fighting, I said, each word a struggle. Her brother. He called me trash, like always. I stood up for myself. She didn't like it. Told me to apologize or get out. I wouldn't apologize. So she just drove off. Left me here. My eyes stung, not from the dust, but from the truth of it. 6 years together, vows, late-night talks, dreams we'd whispered in the dark, and it all ended with her tires spitting gravel in my face. Talia let out a low whistle. That's cold, she said. And you're sure you want this on camera? Once it's out there, there's no going back. I clenched my jaw, the pain making my head swim. I want the world to know, I said. She thinks she can bury me. She's wrong. I don't know how long it took for the news van to find me, maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour. Time was slipping, my thoughts foggy, the pain pulling me under like a riptide. But then I saw headlights, heard tires on gravel, and Talia's voice calling out. Over here, she shouted, and suddenly there were hands on me, pulling me up, a camera light blinding me. I squinted, trying to focus. Talia was kneeling beside me, her face all angles and concern. You look like hell, she said, but there was a glint in her eyes, like she knew this was bigger than either of us. The cameraman, a burly guy with a beard, was already filming, the red light on his rig like a beacon. Talk to me, Talia said, holding a mic close. What happened here? I took a shaky breath, the pain so bad I could barely form words. My wife, I started, my voice hoarse. She's everything to the world, but to me, she's a lie. Her family treats me like I'm nothing. Today, I fought back. And she left me here, hurting, because I wouldn't bow down. I paused, wincing, my hand pressed to my side. Talia leaned closer, her eyes locked on mine. "You're saying she abandoned you during a medical emergency?" she asked, feeding me the line. I nodded, the motion making my head spin. "Yeah," I said. "She didn't care. She just drove away." The cameraman zoomed in, and I could feel it, the moment I stopped being invisible. I wasn't just her husband anymore. I was a story. Talia's questions kept coming, but my answers were getting shorter, my voice fading. The pain was winning now, my vision spotting black. "We need to get you help," she said suddenly, her hand on my arm. She turned to the cameraman. "Call 911. Now." I tried to protest, to keep talking, but my body wasn't listening. The last thing I saw was Talia's face, the camera light, and the highway stretching out like a scar across the dusk. Then it all went dark. When I came to, I was in an ambulance, the wail of the siren cutting through the fog in my head. A paramedic was checking my vitals, her hands quick and steady. "You're lucky we got to you," she said. "You're in bad shape." I tried to sit up, but she pushed me back down. "Stay still," she said. "We're almost at the hospital." My phone was buzzing in my pocket, the screen lighting up with notifications. I squinted at it, my hands too weak to hold it steady. Talia's story had already hit the air. The headline was everywhere: "Celebrity husband abandoned during medical emergency." Social media was on fire, hashtags, videos, strangers picking sides. I wasn't nobody anymore. I was the guy who'd called her bluff. The ambulance hit a bump, and I groaned, the pain pulling me back to reality. The paramedic gave me a look, like she knew I was fighting more than just my body. "Hang in there," she said. "You're tougher than you look." I closed my eyes, her words settling into me. She was right. I was tougher than I looked, tougher than my wife thought, tougher than her brother's smirks or her family's disdain. The story was out now, and it wasn't hers to control anymore. As the ambulance sped toward the hospital, I felt something shift inside me, something stronger than the pain. I'd been left on the roadside, but I wasn't staying there. This was just the beginning. I woke up to the steady beep of a hospital monitor, the sound pulling me out of a haze that felt like drowning in thick fog. My body was heavy, like someone had poured concrete into my veins, and my side ached with a dull, persistent throb, not the sharp fire from before, but enough to remind me I wasn't dreaming. The room was small, sterile, all white walls and fluorescent lights that made my head pound. I blinked, trying to piece together how I'd gotten here. The highway. The gravel under my knees. Her voice, cold as ice. "Get out." The memory hit me like a punch, and I clenched my fists, the four-line tugging at my arm. 6 years of marriage, and it ended with me left for dead on the side of a road. But I wasn't dead. Not yet. And that meant I still had a fight to finish. I turned my head, wincing at the stiffness in my neck, and saw a plastic chair by the bed, empty except for a crumpled jacket. No flowers, no cards, no sign of her or her family. I wasn't surprised, but it still stung, a quiet kind of hurt that settled deep in my chest. I'd given everything to her world, my time, my pride, my silence, and they couldn't even pretend to care. My phone was on the bedside table, the screen dark but alive with notifications when I tapped it. Hundreds of messages, emails, missed calls. I didn't recognize most of the numbers, but one name stood out: Talia Green. The reporter who'd found me, who'd turned my pain into a headline. She'd been the only one to show up when it mattered. I scrolled through the news alerts first, my hands still shaky from whatever they'd pumped into me. The story was everywhere: "Celebrity husband abandoned during medical emergency," splashed across every site, every app. There were clips of me on the roadside, my voice breaking as I told Talia what happened, cut with old red carpet photos of me and my wife, her smile perfect, mine strained. Social media was a wildfire. People were tearing into her, calling her heartless, fake. There was a hashtag trending, something like cold-hearted star. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to feel satisfied, to think she was finally getting what she deserved. But another part, the part that still remembered our first date, our first kiss, just felt empty. How did we get here? How did love turn into this? The door creaked open, and a nurse walked in, a woman with kind eyes and a clipboard. "You're awake," she said, checking the monitor. "Good. You gave us a scare." I tried to sit up, but she shook her head. "Easy. You had emergency surgery. Your appendix burst. You're lucky you got here when you did." I nodded, my throat dry. "How long am I stuck here?" I asked, my voice rough. She glanced at the chart. "A few days, at least." You need to rest. Your body's been through a lot. I almost laughed. My body wasn't the only thing that had been through a lot. But I didn't say that. I just leaned back, staring at the ceiling as she adjusted my fore and left, her footsteps fading into the hum of the hospital. Alone again, I let my mind wander back to the beginning, to the day I met her. It was at a community center, of all places. I was volunteering, hauling boxes of canned food for a drive, when she walked in, not the superstar, not yet, just a girl with a guitar and a smile that made the room feel warmer. We talked for hours that day, about nothing and everything, and I thought I'd found someone real. Even after she got famous, after the red carpets and the private jets, I believed in us. I signed her prenup without blinking, stood by her through every scandal, every fight with her family. I thought that's what love was, standing firm, no matter what. But lying here now, I saw it for what it was. I'd been a prop in her story, a background character she could cut when the scene got messy. My phone buzzed again, pulling me out of the memory. Another email, this one from a talk show producer. We'd love to hear your side of the story. Can you be in studio next week? I deleted it, my jaw tight. I wasn't ready for that, not yet. But the messages kept coming, strangers, mostly people I'd never met, pouring out their own stories. My husband left me when I got sick. My wife kicked me out because I embarrassed her. You're not alone. I read them, one after another, each one like a brick in a wall I didn't know I was building. I wasn't alone. I'd spent years feeling like I was, like I had to shrink to fit her world, but these people saw me. They understood. The door opened again, and this time it was Talia, holding a small bouquet of daisies wrapped in plastic. Figured you could use some color in here, she said, setting them on the table. Her hair was pulled back, her jacket rumpled like she'd been running around all day. How you holding up? I shrugged, the motion tugging at my stitches. Alive, I said. Thanks to you. She waved it off, pulling the chair closer. Just doing my job. But I gotta say, you've got the internet in a frenzy. People are eating this up. I looked at her, trying to read her face. Is that a good thing? I asked. She leaned back, crossing her arms. Depends on what you want. Right now, you're the underdog. People love that. But it's your call what happens next. I didn't answer right away. I hadn't thought that far, hadn't thought past surviving the pain, the betrayal. But as I lay there, the monitor beeping, Talia's daisies catching the light, something clicked. I didn't just want to survive this. I wanted to fight back, not with anger, not with hate, but with the truth. I'd spent years keeping quiet, protecting her image, her family's secrets. No more. I want to tell everything. I said finally, my voice steady for the first time all day. Not just what happened on the road. All of it. The lies, the control, everything. Talia raised an eyebrow, a slow smile spreading across her face. That's a big move, she said. You sure? I nodded, feeling the weight of it settle into me. I'm sure. She stood up, grabbing her jacket. Get some rest, she said. You're gonna need it. As she left, I looked at my phone again, the screen still glowing with messages. I wasn't just a headline anymore. I was a voice, and I was done being silent. The pain in my side was still there, the emptiness in my chest too, but for the first time in years, I felt something else, something like hope. I closed my eyes, letting the hospital's hum fade into the background, knowing this was only the start. The hospital let me go 3 days later, but I still felt like I was carrying half the pain with me when I stepped out into the sunlight. My side was sore, stitched up and bandaged, and every step tugged at the wound, reminding me of that moment on the highway when she drove away. The air was crisp, the kind of LA morning that fools you into thinking everything's clean and new. But nothing felt clean, not my thoughts, not the life I was walking back into. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since I woke up in recovery, a constant hum of strangers' voices, reporters' emails, and notifications from people I hadn't spoken to in years. The story was still growing, spreading like wildfire across the internet, and I was at the center of it, whether I wanted to be. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing. I couldn't let her control the narrative anymore. A cab dropped me off at a coffee shop downtown, where I was meeting someone Talia had connected me with, a lawyer named Marcus DeWitt. She'd called him the guy you want when you're taking on a giant, and I trusted her enough to believe it. The place was busy, all clinking mugs and low chatter, the smell of roasted beans thick in the air. I found a corner table, easing myself into the chair with a wince. My body wasn't ready for this, but my head was. I'd spent too many years bending, shrinking, letting her family's words chip away at me. Now, I was done playing small. I ordered a black coffee, letting the warmth of the mug steady my hands, and waited. Marcus showed up right on time, a tall man in a sharp suit, his graying hair giving him a look of quiet authority. He slid into the seat across from me, his eyes scanning me like he was sizing up more than just my story. "You look better than I expected," he said, his voice low but warm. "Heard you almost didn't make it." I shrugged, the motion pulling at my stitches. "Yeah, well, I'm stubborn," I said, managing a half-smile. He nodded, like he respected that, and got straight to it. "Talia filled me in, but I want to hear it from you. What do you want out of this?" I took a sip of coffee, letting the question settle. What did I want? Justice? Revenge? A way to feel whole again? "I want the truth out there," I said finally. "She left me to die because I didn't fit her image. I want people to know who she really is, and I don't want her to walk away clean." He leaned back, tapping a pen against his notepad. "That's a start," he said. "But we need a plan. You're up against someone with money, power, and a PR machine that's probably already working overtime. If we're going to fight, we fight smart." I like that. No promises, no fluff, just strategy. I told him everything, the words spilling out easier than I expected. The roadside, her brother's insults, the way her family had always treated me like a mistake she'd made. I told him about the prenup too, the one I'd signed without a second thought because I thought love meant trust. Marcus listened, jotting notes, his face unreadable until I finished. "We've got something here," he said, "but we need evidence. Texts, emails, anything that shows what they've been doing behind closed doors. You think you can get that?" I nodded, my mind already racing. There were things back at the house, papers, maybe even her old laptop. I wasn't sure what I'd find, but I knew I had to look. Marcus wasn't done, though. "One more thing," he said, leaning forward. "You need to stay visible. Keep talking, keep the pressure on. The public's on your side right now, use it. But don't let it go to your head. Stay honest, stay you." I thought about the messages I'd been getting, all those strangers rooting for me. He was right. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was bigger. Before we parted ways, Marcus gave me another contact, a digital forensic expert named Rowan, someone who could dig into things Marcus called the digital paper trail. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but I trusted it would matter. As I left the coffee shop, the city buzzing around me, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and purpose. My body was still weak, but my resolve wasn't. I hailed another cab, this one headed to Talia's news station. She texted me that morning, saying she had airtime for a follow-up if I was ready. I wasn't sure I was, but sitting still wasn't an option. The world was watching, and I had to keep moving forward. The station was a maze of bright lights and hurried voices, cables snaking across the floor like vines. Talia met me at the entrance, her smile quick but genuine. "You clean up nice," she said, eyeing my borrowed jacket and jeans, stuff I'd grabbed from a hospital donation bin. "Ready to stir the pot again?" I followed her inside, my stomach twisting, not from pain this time, but from nerves. "Ready as I'll ever be," I said. She led me to a small studio, where a makeup artist dusted powder on my face, muttering about shadows. I barely recognized myself in the mirror, pale, thinner than I remembered, but my eyes were sharp, like they belonged to someone who'd finally woken up. The interview was live, just me and Talia on a set that felt too polished for the mess of my life. The camera's red light blinked on, and she leaned forward, her voice steady. "You're out of the hospital, but the story's far from over," she said. "What's next for you?" I took a breath, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "I'm not going away," I said, my voice clearer than I expected. She thought she could erase me, but I'm still here. And I'm going to keep telling the truth, no matter what it takes. Talia nodded, her eyes encouraging me to keep going. So I did. I talked about the years of silence, the way her family's disdain had chipped away at me, the moment on the highway when I realized I was worth more than their lies. I didn't cry, didn't yell, just spoke, like I was talking to a friend. When it was over, Talia squeezed my arm off camera. "You did good," she said. "That's going to hit hard." As I left the station, my phone lit up again. Clips of the interview were already online, racking up views faster than I could track. People were sharing it, quoting me, turning my words into memes. But it was one post that stopped me cold, a photo of her, my wife, on Instagram, her face soft and somber, captioned, "Some people just don't belong in the spotlight." My blood ran hot, the stitches in my side pulling as I gripped the phone. She was still playing the victim, still spinning the story. I wanted to scream, to call her out right then. But Marcus's words echoed in my head. "Fight smart." So I didn't reply. I didn't comment. Instead, I saved the post, knowing it was a piece of the puzzle, a crack in her perfect facade. I'd use it later, when the time was right. For now, I had work to do. The cab ride to the Brentwood estate felt like crossing into enemy territory, even though my name was still on the deed. My side ached with every bump in the road, a reminder of the surgery, the highway, her betrayal. The city blurred past, palm trees, billboards, the kind of LA shine that hides all the cracks underneath. I gripped my phone, Marcus's words looping in my head. We need evidence. I wasn't sure what I'd find in the house, but I knew I couldn't walk away empty-handed. The world was watching now, thanks to Talia's interviews and the internet's obsession with the story. That Instagram post of hers, "Some people just don't belong in the spotlight," was still burning a hole in my chest. But I wasn't here to react. I was here to fight, and fighting meant finding something real, something she couldn't spin. The gate guard gave me a long look when I pulled up, his hand hovering over his radio like he was expecting trouble. "I live here," I said, my voice steady despite the nerves twisting my gut. "Check the paperwork." I slid my ID and a crumpled copy of the marriage certificate through the window. He squinted at it, then at me, like I was a ghost who'd wandered back to haunt the place. After a tense minute, he nodded and waved me through, muttering something about calling it in. I didn't care. I was in. The driveway stretched out like a runway, leading to the mansion that used to feel like home but now looked like a stranger's castle, all glass and sharp angles, built to impress, not to live in. I stepped out of the cab, my legs shaky but my resolve solid. The front door was locked, but I still had my key, tucked in my wallet like a relic from another life. It turned with a soft click, and I pushed the door open, bracing for alarms or security rushing in. Nothing. Just silence, heavy and cold, like the house was holding its breath. I stepped inside, the marble floor gleaming under my sneakers, and stopped short. The place was half empty. The big stuff was still there, the chandelier dripping crystals, the oversized couch she'd picked for photo shoots, but the personal touches were gone. My books, our photos, the little things that made this ours. It was like she'd already started erasing me, piece by piece. I stood there, my chest tight, feeling the weight of it all. This was where we danced in the kitchen at midnight, where I'd held her after her first Grammy nomination, where I thought we'd build a life. Now it was just a shell, a museum of her ambition. But I didn't have time to dwell. I moved toward the study, my steps slow to keep the pain in my side from flaring up. That's where she kept her files, her contracts, all the paperwork her team churned out like clockwork. If there was anything to find, it'd be there, or in her office upstairs, where she'd spend hours on calls, shutting me out with a smile and a, "You wouldn't understand." The study was locked, but I knew her habits. A spare key was taped under the desk, a trick she thought I'd never noticed. I found it, my fingers brushing dust as I peeled it free and let myself in. The room smelled like her perfume, sharp and floral, and for a second, I was back in the early days, when that scent meant love instead of lies. I shook it off, focusing on the filing cabinet in the corner. It was a mess, folders stuffed with bank statements, contracts, receipts. I flipped through them, my hands moving faster than my brain could keep up. Most of it was noise, tour budgets, endorsement deals. But then I found something, a folder labeled Personal, tucked at the back. Inside were financial records, transfers to accounts I didn't recognize, dated months before the highway. My name wasn't on them, but hers was, along with her brother's and someone else, a name I'd seen in her emails but couldn't place. I shoved it into my bag, my pulse racing. This was something. I didn't know what yet, but it felt like a crack in her armor. I moved upstairs next, each step pulling at my stitches, making me grit my teeth. Her office was at the end of the hall, a room I rarely went into because it was her space. The door was ajar, like someone had left in a hurry. Inside, it was chaos, drawers half open, papers scattered, a coffee mug still sitting on the desk. She'd been here, or someone had, and they hadn't expected me to show up. I started with the desk, rifling through notebooks and sticky notes, looking for anything that could help. Most of it was useless, schedules, lyrics scribbled in her looping handwriting. But then I found a journal, leather-bound, tucked under a stack of magazines. I hesitated, my fingers brushing the cover. This wasn't just evidence. This was personal, a window into her head. I opened it anyway. The entries were short, some just a line or two, but they hit like bullets. "He's holding me back. The family thinks he's a liability. Jared says we need to cut him loose before the next album. Jared, her manager, the guy who was always too close, too smooth. I kept reading, my stomach turning as her words painted a picture of a marriage that wasn't failing but was being dismantled, piece by piece, long before I saw it coming. I slipped the journal into my bag, right next to the financial folder, and kept searching. In a drawer, I found a flash drive labeled Eternal Love, and my breath caught. Our wedding video. She'd kept it, even after everything. I didn't know why, but I took it, too, the weight of it heavy in my pocket. I was about to leave when I heard a car pull up outside. My heart jumped, and I moved to the window, peering through the blinds. A black SUV, one of her team's cars. I didn't have time to think. I grabbed my bag, slipping out of the office and down the back stairs, my side screaming with every step. I made it to the kitchen just as the front door opened, voices echoing. Her assistant, maybe, or security. I didn't wait to find out. I ducked out the side door, into the garden, and kept moving until I was back on the street, my breath ragged but my hands full of what I'd come for. That night, Talia aired my second interview. I didn't mention what I'd found, not yet, but I talked about the highway again, about the years of being invisible in her world. They cut my words with clips from our wedding, the flash drive I'd handed over to the station. Me, smiling like I'd won the world. Her, radiant, promising forever. The contrast was brutal, and the internet exploded. 10 million views by morning, they said. I watched it from a motel room, my bag of evidence on the bed, knowing I'd just lit a fuse. The house wasn't home anymore, but it had given me what I needed to keep fighting. I wasn't invisible now, and I wasn't stopping. I sat in a dimly lit diner across from Rowan, the digital forensic expert Marcus had hooked me up with. My hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The bag from the Brentwood house was at my feet, stuffed with the journal, the financial folder, and that flash drive labeled Eternal Love. My side still ached, a dull reminder of the surgery, but it was nothing compared to the weight in my chest. I'd spent the last few days replaying everything, her voice on the highway, the way she'd laughed when I said I'd call the news, the Instagram post that tried to paint me as the problem. Every piece of it fueled me, kept me moving when all I wanted was to collapse. But sitting here now, waiting for Rowan to finish scanning the flash drive on his laptop, I felt like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't come back from. Rowan was younger than I expected, maybe late 20s, with a messy ponytail and glasses that kept sliding down his nose. He didn't look like someone who could crack open a superstar's secrets, but Marcus swore he was the best. "This is going to take a minute," he said, his fingers flying over the keyboard, eyes locked on the screen. "You sure you want to dig this deep? Once I pull something, it's out there. No undoing it." I nodded, my jaw tight. "I'm sure," I said. "She's been lying for years. I need to know how far it goes." He glanced at me, just for a second, like he was measuring my resolve, then went back to work. The diner's hum, clinking dishes, a waitress calling orders, faded into the background as I waited, my mind churning. I thought about the journal I'd found, those sharp, cutting words in her handwriting. He's holding me back. Jared says we need to cut him loose. Jared, her manager, with his slick suits and sharper smiles, always hovering like he owned her. I'd never liked him, but I chalked it up to jealousy, to feeling out of place in her world. Now, I wasn't so sure. The financial papers, too, those transfers to accounts I didn't know, felt like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't wanted to see until now. I'd trusted her, believed in us, even when her family treated me like dirt. But trust was gone, burned up on that highway with the dust of her tires. Whatever Rowan found, I was ready to use it. Not to hurt her, not really, just to show the world the truth she'd buried. Rowan's laptop pinged, and he leaned closer, his face lit by the screen's glow. "Got something," he said, his voice low. He turned the laptop toward me, showing a folder of emails pulled from the flash drive. I hadn't even known it held more than the wedding video, but there they were, hundreds of messages, some going back years. "Most of it's junk," he said, scrolling. "But these," he opened a thread between her and Jared, dated 6 months ago. My stomach twisted as I read the subject line, "Exit plan." I leaned in, the words blurring for a second before they snapped into focus. Jared's email was blunt. "If he ever becomes a problem, just leave him somewhere cameras won't follow. He's more PR risk than husband anyway." Her reply was worse. "Agreed. Timing's everything. We'll move the assets first, then file. He won't see it coming." I sat back, my breath shallow, like someone had knocked the air out of me. "They planned this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Not just the highway. All of it. Rowan nodded, his face neutral but his eyes sharp. There's more, he said. Voice memos, too. Want to hear them? I hesitated, my hand tightening around the muck. Part of me didn't want to hear her voice saying things I couldn't unhear. But I nodded anyway. Play it, I said. He clicked a file, and her voice filled the space between us, cool and detached, like she was discussing a business deal. Jared, it's me. The house is in my name now. He doesn't know. Once we're clear, you can move in. We'll be untouchable. The memo cut off, and I stared at the table, my pulse pounding in my ears. Jared wasn't just her manager. He was her backup plan, her lover, maybe even her future. I'd suspected it, deep down, but hearing it was different, like a blade sliding clean through me. I thought of the nights I'd spent alone in that mansion, telling myself she was just busy, just stressed. I thought of the highway, her cold eyes as she told me to get out. She hadn't just left me to save face. She'd left me to clear the board for him. I looked at Rowan, my hand shaking but my voice steady. What else is there? I asked. He scrolled again, pulling up screenshots of texts, more emails, even a draft of a divorce filing dated weeks before the highway. It was all there, her plan to cut me out, to move money, to make sure I walked away with nothing. I felt sick, but not defeated. If anything, it sharpened me, made everything clearer. Can you get all this to Marcus? I asked. Rowan nodded, already copying files. I'll encrypt it, send it tonight. But you need to decide how to play this. This isn't just a story anymore. It's a war. I leaned back, the diner's noise creeping back in, grounding me. He was right. This was bigger than Talias' interviews, bigger than hashtags. This was about tearing down the lies she'd built, not just for me, but for everyone who'd ever been thrown away like they didn't matter. I paid for the coffee and stepped outside, the night air cool against my skin. My phone buzzed, another clip of my last interview, still gaining traction. I didn't watch it. Instead, I called Marcus, my voice calmer than I felt. Rowan's got something, I said when he picked up. Emails, memos, proof she was planning to screw me over long before the highway. You'll have it soon. He let out a low whistle. Good work, he said. Stay sharp. Don't talk about this yet, not to Talia, not to anyone. We need to build the case first. I agreed, hanging up as I started walking, the city's pulse matching my own. I didn't know what came next, not exactly. A lawsuit, maybe, or another interview when the time was right. But as I moved through the streets, the bag slung over my shoulder, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't the guy she'd left on the roadside anymore, not the one who'd begged for scraps of her attention. I was someone new, someone with proof, with a voice, with a fight she hadn't seen coming. The journal, the emails, the memos, they were weapons now, and I'd use them when the moment was right. For now, I kept walking, my stitches pulling but my steps sure. She thought she'd buried me, but all she'd done was wake me up. I looked at the stars above the city, brighter than I remembered, and said the words out loud, quiet but certain, let's burn it all down. I sat in Marcus's office, a cramped space downtown that smelled of old leather and coffee, my hands resting on the folder Rowan had sent over. It was thick with printouts, emails, texts, voice memo transcripts, all the ugly proof of her plan to cut me out of her life long before she left me on that highway. The morning sun slanted through the blinds, catching dust in the air, and I felt a strange calm, like the quiet before a storm. My side still ached, the stitches pulling if I moved too fast, but the pain was just. What mattered was the fight in front of me, the one I'd chosen when I told Rowan to dig deeper. She thought she could erase me, rewrite our story to make me the villain. But I had the truth now, and I wasn't letting it go. Marcus leaned back in his chair, flipping through the folder, his glasses perched low on his nose. This is dynamite, he said, his voice steady but with an edge of excitement. The emails alone could sink her, but the voice memos? That's intent. Premeditation. We can build a case around this. Spousal abandonment, emotional distress, maybe even fraudulent transfer if we can tie those accounts to her. I nodded, my fingers tapping the armrest. What about the divorce? I asked. I don't want to drag this out forever. I just want what's fair. He looked at me over the folder, his eyes sharp. Fair's a start, he said. But we're not just filing for divorce. We're hitting her where it hurts, her image. You okay with that? I thought about her Instagram post, the way she tried to spin me as the problem. Yeah, I said. I'm okay with that. The plan was simple but brutal. Marcus would file the divorce papers that afternoon, citing her abandonment and adding claims for compensation, defamation, and fraud. Rowan's evidence would back it up. Every email, every memo showing she'd been moving money and planning to ditch me long before the highway. But Marcus wasn't just aiming for a settlement. He wanted the public to see it, to keep the pressure on her. "She's already slipping," he said, tossing a tablet onto the desk. It was open to a news site, her latest interview with some glossy magazine. "He's lying," she'd said. "He's emotionally unstable." The words twisted in my gut, but Marcus just smirked. "She's desperate," he said. "That's good. Desperate people make mistakes." I left his office with a copy of the filing, my head buzzing. The city was alive outside, cars honking, people rushing past, but I felt like I was moving in slow motion, every step heavier with what I just set in motion. I wasn't just fighting for me anymore. I kept thinking about the messages I'd gotten in the hospital, all those strangers who'd been tossed aside like they didn't matter. This was for them too. I stopped at a park bench, needing a moment to breathe, and pulled out my phone. The internet was still chewing on her interview, but the tide was turning. People weren't buying her story, not with Rowan's leak starting to spread. Someone had posted one of the emails, just a snippet, but it was enough to spark a new hashtag, truth over fame. I stared at it, my chest tight. This was real now. No going back. Talia called as I sat there, her voice crackling with energy. "You see what's happening online?" she asked. "You're trending again. People are eating this up." I leaned forward, rubbing my face. "Yeah, I saw," I said, "but I don't want it to just be noise. I need it to mean something." She paused, like she was weighing her words. "It already does," she said. "You're giving people a voice. Keep going. You got anything new for me?" I thought about the filing, the folder burning a hole in my back. "Not yet," I said, remembering Marcus's warning to stay quiet until the papers hit. "Soon, though. I'll let you know." She laughed, a quick, warm sound. "I'm holding you to that," she said, and hung up. I spent the rest of the day walking, letting the city's rhythm steady me. My body was still weak, but my mind was sharp, turning over every detail of the last 6 years. The red carpets where I'd stood a step behind her, smiling for cameras while her family whispered I didn't belong. The nights I'd waited up, telling myself her distance was just stress. The prenup I'd signed because I thought love meant trusting her. Every memory was a thread, and I was pulling them apart, seeing the pattern I'd missed. She hadn't just left me on the highway. She'd been leaving me for years, piece by piece, and I'd let her because I wanted to believe in us. That was over now. I wasn't that guy anymore. By evening, I was back at the motel I'd been crashing in, too tired to keep moving but too wired to sleep. I turned on the TV, flipping channels until I landed on a gossip show. Her face was there, all soft lighting and practiced tears, talking about moving forward and healing. The host nodded along, but the comments crawling across the bottom of the screen weren't so kind. "Liar. Where's the proof? He deserves better." I muted it, my hands shaking. She was still trying to play the victim, still thinking she could outrun the truth. But Marcus had filed the papers an hour ago. By morning, the world would know I wasn't backing down. I opened my laptop, skimming the latest posts online. The snippet Rowan had leaked was everywhere now, quoted in articles, dissected on forums. People were digging into her past, pulling up old interviews where she dodged questions about me, moments where her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I didn't join in. I didn't need to. The evidence was doing the work, and Marcus was right. She was slipping. I found myself scrolling through the messages again, the ones from strangers who'd reached out in the hospital. "You're not alone. Keep fighting. She didn't break you." I read them until my eyes burned, each one like a hand pulling me up from that gravel shoulder. I closed the laptop, leaning back against the motel's lumpy pillows. My side throbbed, but I barely noticed. I was thinking about the courtroom, about what it would feel like to face her, to lay it all bare. Not just the highway, but the years of control, the way she'd made me feel small so she could shine brighter. I wasn't looking for pity. I didn't want it. I wanted accountability for her family, for everyone who looked the other way while I disappeared into her shadow. The filing was just the first step. Marcus said it could get ugly, and I believed him. But I was ready. She'd built her empire on lies, and I was holding the match to burn it down. As I drifted towards sleep, my phone buzzed one last time. A text from Marcus. "Papers served." "It's on." I stared at it, the words glowing in the dark. The storm was here now, and I wasn't running from it. I'd been invisible too long, but that ended today. Tomorrow, the world would see me, not as her husband, not as a footnote, but as the man who stood up and said enough. The courtroom smelled like polished wood and stale air, a mix that settled heavy in my chest as I sat at the plaintiff's table, Marcus beside me shuffling papers. My side was still tender, the stitches long gone, but the scar a constant reminder of the highway, of her cold eyes as she drove away. Today wasn't about that moment, though, not just that. It was about everything. The years of being silenced, the lies she'd spun, the plan she and Jared had cooked up to cut me out. The divorce filing had hit the news like a bomb, and the internet was still picking through the pieces, Rowan's leaks, my interviews, her desperate magazine quotes. But this room, with its high ceiling and hard benches, wasn't the internet. This was real, and I was here to tell the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The judge, a woman with gray hair and a no-nonsense stare, called the session to order, and I felt my pulse kick up, steady but fast, like a drum I couldn't ignore. Her lawyer stood first, a slick guy in a suit that probably cost more than my old car. He spun a story about me being unstable, a burden she'd carried out of kindness, painting her as the saint who'd tried to save our marriage. I clenched my jaw, my hands flat on the table to keep them still. Marcus leaned over, his voice low. "Let him talk," he said. "He's digging his own hole." I nodded, but it wasn't easy, sitting there while lies filled the room like smoke. When it was my turn, I stood, my legs steadier than I expected. The courtroom was small but packed, reporters, a few curious locals, and faces I didn't recognize, all watching me like I was the main act. I didn't look at her, not yet. I kept my eyes on the judge, took a breath, and started talking. "I'm not here to play victim," I said, my voice clear despite the knot in my throat. "I'm here because I was married to someone who made me invisible, not just to the world, but to myself. For years, I let it happen, her family's insults, her control, her rules. I thought that's what love was, taking the hits so she could shine. But then she left me on the side of a highway, sick, dying, because I dared to stand up for myself. That wasn't love. That was power." I paused, the room so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I told them about the highway, every detail, the gravel under my knees, the pain in my gut, her brother's laugh as they drove off. But I didn't stop there. I talked about the years before, the way her family treated me like a stray they'd grudgingly let in, the prenup I'd signed because I trusted her, the nights I'd spent alone while she built her empire. I told them about the emails Marcus had filed as evidence, the ones Rowan dug up showing she'd been planning to ditch me long before that day. "She didn't just abandon me," I said. "She planned it. With her manager, Jared. They moved money, drafted papers, talked about me like I was a problem to solve. I was her husband, and she left me to die because I didn't fit her image." The judge's face didn't change, but I saw her pen moving, taking notes. I glanced at the defense table then, just for a second, and caught her eyes, hard, unyielding. But there was something else, a flicker of fear. Good. She should be scared. Marcus stood next, his voice calm, but sharp as he walked the judge through the evidence. He projected one of the emails on a screen, Jared's words in black and white. "If he ever becomes a problem, just leave him somewhere cameras won't follow." A murmur ran through the room, and I saw a reporter scribbling furiously in the back. Marcus didn't flinch. He played the voice memo next, her voice cool and calculated. "The house is in my name now. He doesn't know." The air felt heavier after that, like everyone was holding their breath. Her lawyer tried to push back, claiming the emails were taken out of context, that I'd been manipulative and volatile. He even brought up my interviews with Talia, saying I'd gone public to extort her. Marcus shut that down fast, pointing out that I'd been fighting for my life when I called the news, that I'd had no one else to turn to. The judge nodded, her eyes narrowing at the defense, and I felt a spark of hope, small but real. We weren't done yet, though. Marcus had one more card to play, a witness, someone I hadn't expected until yesterday. The bailiff called Noor, her former assistant, to the stand. I watched her walk up, a young woman with nervous hands but a steady gaze. She'd reached out to Marcus last week, saying she couldn't stay quiet anymore. As she swore in, I leaned forward, my heart pounding. Noor's voice was soft but clear as she started. "I worked for her for 3 years, she said. I saw everything. How she treated him, how her family talked about him like he was nothing. He was never the problem. He was kind, always asking how I was, remembering my birthday when she didn't. But she wanted him gone. I heard her and Jared talking, planning to move assets, to make it look like he'd left her. The highway wasn't an accident. It was convenient." The courtroom erupted, voices overlapping until the judge banged her gavel. I stared at Noor, gratitude mixing with the ache in my chest. She didn't have to do this. Risk her career, her reputation, but she had, for me. Her lawyer tried to trip her up, asking why she'd stayed silent so long, but Noor didn't waver. I was scared, she said. But I'm not anymore. He deserves the truth. When she stepped down, she glanced at me, a quick nod that felt like a lifeline. I nodded back, my throat tight. The session ended soon after, the judge saying she'd review the evidence and rule soon. As we filed out, Marcus clapped a hand on my shoulder. You did good up there, he said. So did Noor. This isn't over, but we've got her on the ropes. I managed to smile, but my eyes were on her as she left with her team, her head high but her steps quick, like she couldn't get out fast enough. The reporters swarmed me outside, cameras flashing, but Marcus waved them off, guiding me to his car. Save it for Talia, he said. She'll get the exclusive when we're ready. I spent the rest of the day in the motel, the TV on low, showing clips of the trial. My testimony was everywhere, cut with Noor's words in that damning email. The internet was merciless, memes, threads, even a petition to boycott her music. I didn't read much of it. I was too tired, too raw. But as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I felt something shift. Not victory, not yet, but clarity. I told my story, not just for me, but for everyone who'd been made to feel small. The scar on my side, the one from the highway, didn't hurt as much tonight. Maybe it was healing. Or maybe I was just stronger than I'd been. Either way, I wasn't invisible anymore. And I wasn't done fighting. I stood in the Brentwood Mansion's foyer, the keys heavy in my hand, the deed officially mine after the judge's ruling came down last week. The chandelier overhead caught the morning light, scattering it across the marble floor, but the house didn't feel like a prize, it felt like a ghost. My side still carried a faint ache, the scar from the surgery a quiet reminder of the highway, but I was stronger now, steadier. The trial was over, and I'd won, not just the house, but compensation, enough to start over, and a settlement that kept her out of jail but clipped her wings. Jared was gone too, his contracts canceled by companies spooked by the headlines. I could have gloated, could have let the internet's roar fill the hole she'd left, but that wasn't what I wanted. I was here to build something new, something that mattered more than revenge. The courtroom had been the end of her story, but the start of mine. After Noor's testimony and Rowan's evidence, the judge hadn't taken long to decide. Fraudulent transfer, emotional distress, spousal abandonment, the charges stuck, and the public ate it up. Her tearful magazine interviews couldn't save her. The emails, the voice memos, my own words on the stand were too loud. She'd settled quietly, her lawyer's face grim as they signed over the house and a chunk of her accounts. I didn't care about the money, not really. It was the principle, her thinking she could erase me, that I'd vanish like a bad dream. I hadn't. And now, this mansion, her palace of perfection, was mine to reshape. I walked through the empty rooms, my steps echoing, the space still half cleared from when she'd tried to gut it before I got back. The study where I'd found her journal, the office with its scattered papers, the kitchen where we'd once laughed over burnt toast, it all felt like someone else's life. I stopped in the living room, the one she'd staged for photo shoots, and pictured what it could be. Not a shrine to her fame, but a place for people like me, people who'd been thrown away by the rich and powerful. I'd been turning the idea over since the trial, talking it out with Marcus and Talia late at night. A nonprofit, a foundation, something to help spouses who'd been silenced, who needed a voice. I wanted to call it the Barron Foundation, not for her family, but for me, for the name I'd reclaimed. I set my bag down, pulling out a notebook where I'd been jotting plans. Legal aid, counseling, a hotline, things I wished I'd had when I was drowning in her world. The money from the settlement would seed it, and Marcus was already connecting me with donors who'd seen the trial and wanted in. I wasn't naive. I knew it'd be hard, knew I'd be learning as I went. But I learned a lot already, how to fight, how to stand up, how to keep going when the pain was more than physical. I flipped to a blank page, sketching out a logo idea, something simple with a flame for truth. It felt good to create, to build instead of break. By afternoon, a contractor showed up, a guy Talia recommended for renovations. We walked the house together, his tape measure snapping as he took notes. Big place, he said, eyeing the high ceilings. What's the plan? I pointed to the living room. That's the meeting space, I said. Support groups, workshops. Upstairs, offices for lawyers and counselors. I want it functional, not flashy. He nodded, scribbling. Can do, he said. You're keeping the chandelier, though, right? It's a showstopper. I glanced at it, remembering her saying it was too bright for broken people. Yeah, I said. It stays. Let's light it up. The rest of the day was a blur, calls with Marcus about permits, emails from volunteers who'd heard about the foundation through Talia's latest segment. She'd aired a piece after the trial, framing it not as my victory, but as a call to action, a story about surviving and giving back. It brought in more support than I'd expected, people offering time, money, even furniture for the house. I was grateful, but it was overwhelming, too. I wasn't used to being seen, not like this. For years, I'd been her shadow, the guy who smiled and stayed quiet. Now, I was leading something, and it scared me as much as it fueled me. That evening, I met the first support group in the living room, just a small circle of chairs under that chandelier. 5 people showed up, 3 women, 2 men, all with stories that echoed mine in different ways. A woman whose CEO husband had locked her out after she got sick. A man whose heiress wife had smeared him to save face. We didn't talk long, just shared enough to know we weren't alone. I didn't have answers, not yet, but I listened, and that seemed to be enough. As they left, one of the women squeezed my arm. "Thanks," she said. "This place, it's going to help." I nodded, my throat tight, and watched them go, the chandelier glowing above us like a promise. Later, I sat alone in the study, the journal from her desk open in front of me. I hadn't read it since that first night, but I flipped to the last page now, curious. Her final entry was short, written a week before the highway. "I'm tired of pretending. He's not enough." I stared at it, waiting for the old hurt to hit, but it didn't. I wasn't the one who wasn't enough. She was. She'd built her life on lies, and now she was paying for it. Her career wobbling, her image cracked. I closed the journal, setting it aside. It wasn't mine to carry anymore. I stepped outside, the night air cool against my skin. The city hummed in the distance, but the house was quiet, waiting. I thought about the trial, about Nora's courage, Marcus's strategy, Talia's faith in me. They'd all helped me get here, but I was the one still standing, the one turning this place into something better. The foundation wasn't just a project. It was a rebirth, mine and everyone else's who walked through that door. I looked up at the stars, brighter than I'd noticed in years, and felt the scar on my side, a line that didn't define me, but reminded me I'd survived. Tomorrow, I'd meet more volunteers, start sorting donations, keep building. It wouldn't be easy, but nothing worth doing was. I'd been broken on that highway, left to fade, but I hadn't. I'd found my voice, my purpose, and I was using it to light a path for others. The house wasn't hers anymore. It was ours, a place where truth could breathe. I turned back inside, the chandelier still glowing, and got to work. The evening air was warm, carrying the faint hum of the city as I stood outside the Brentwood mansion, now the headquarters of the Barron Foundation. The house didn't look like her anymore. No trace of her polished perfection, just a quiet strength in its open doors and glowing windows. My side barely ached these days. The scar from that highway night faded to a thin line I rarely thought about. I was stronger now, not just in body, but in a way that felt deeper, like I'd rebuilt myself from the ground up. Tonight, Talia and her crew were here, filming a segment about the foundation, about what it meant to turn pain into purpose. I wasn't nervous, not like I'd been for those first interviews. I was ready to tell this story, not hers, not even ours, but mine, and the people we were helping. The crew set up in the front yard, lights casting soft shadows across the lawn. Talia was directing her cameraman, pointing at the new plaque by the door that read, "The Barron Foundation, where truth gets its voice back." I'd chosen those words carefully, a nod to everyone who'd been silenced, including me. She caught my eye and grinned, her energy as sharp as ever. "You sure you're ready for this?" she asked, walking over. "This one's going big. National networks are picking it up." I nodded, adjusting my jacket. "I'm ready," I said. "This isn't about me anymore. It's about them." I meant the people we'd helped, spouses like me, discarded by wealth and ego, who'd found a lifeline here. She squeezed my arm, a quick, warm gesture. "You're doing good," she said, and headed back to her crew. I took a moment alone, leaning against the porch railing, my mind drifting. It had been months since the trial, since the judge handed me the house and enough compensation to start the foundation. Her career was still limping along. She'd put out a single that flopped. Her interviews now dodged questions about me, but I didn't follow it closely. I didn't need to. The internet had done its work, and so had I. Rowan's leaks, Nora's testimony, my own words in court, they'd cracked her image wide open, and she couldn't rebuild it, not the way she used to. I didn't hate her, not anymore. Hate was heavy, and I'd let it go somewhere between the highway and here. What I felt now was freedom, the kind that comes from knowing who you are without someone else's shadow. The crew called me over, and I stepped into the light, Talia beside me with her mic. The camera's red dot blinked on, and she started, her voice steady but warm. "We're here with the man who turned a personal betrayal into a movement," she said. "Tell us about the Barron Foundation." I took a breath, the words coming easy because they were true. "It's a place for people who've been thrown away," I said. "Spouses of the rich, the powerful, who've been silenced or smeared to protect someone else's image. We offer legal help, counseling, a chance to start over. I know what it's like to feel invisible, to think you don't matter. This house, it used to be a stage for lies. Now it's a home for truth." Talia nodded, her eyes encouraging me to keep going. So I did. I talked about the support groups, the hotline we just launched, the lawyers who volunteered time to fight for people who couldn't afford it. I didn't mention her by name, didn't need to. The world knew the story, knew why I was here. I told them about the first group we'd held under the chandelier, the one she'd called too bright for broken people, and how we'd lit it anyway, because broken didn't mean finished. "I'm not bitter," I said, looking straight at the camera. "I'm not here to tear anyone down. I'm here to build something better, to show that you can come back from being left behind. You can be more than someone else's story." The crew wrapped soon after, Talia promising to send me the final cut before it aired. As they packed up, I noticed a car idling across the street, a familiar shape stepping out. My breath caught, not from fear, but from surprise. It wasn't her. It was Geneva, the nurse who'd checked on me in the hospital, the one who'd slipped me her number when I was discharged. We'd been talking for weeks, nothing serious, just quiet conversations over coffee or late-night texts about normal things, movies, music, the kind of life I hadn't lived in years. She waved, a shy smile on her face, and I crossed the lawn to meet her, the crew's noise fading behind me. "Didn't know you were coming," I said, stopping a few feet away. She shrugged, her scrubs wrinkled from a long shift. "Heard you were filming," she said. "Thought I'd see it for myself. This place, it's amazing." I glanced back at the house, the windows warm with light. "It's getting there," I said. "Still a lot to do." She nodded, her eyes soft but steady. "You'll do it," she said. "You're not like most people. You don't give up." Her words hit me harder than I expected, settling into the part of me that still doubted, still wondered if I was enough. I smiled, small but real. "Thanks," I said. "Means a lot." We walked inside together, the crew gone now, the house quiet except for the hum of possibility. I showed her the meeting room, the offices upstairs, the plans pinned to a bulletin board for a community garden out back. She listened, asking questions, laughing at my bad sketches, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself. Not the guy from the headlines, not the husband she'd left, just me. Geneva didn't care about the drama, the trial, the hashtags. She saw the work, the purpose, and that was enough. As we stepped back outside, the stars were out, sharp against the LA sky. Talia's van was pulling away, and I caught the glint of the plaque again, its words clearer in the dark. Geneva noticed it too. "That's perfect," she said, tracing the letters with her finger. Truth getting its voice back. "That's you." I shook my head, my voice low. "It's not just me," I said. "It's everyone who walks through that door. Everyone who gets a second chance." She looked at me, her eyes catching the light, and didn't say anything, but she didn't need to. The moment was enough. I locked up, walking her to her car, the night settling around us like a promise. The foundation was growing. More calls every day, more people needing help, more volunteers stepping up. It wasn't easy, but it was mine, built from the ashes of a life I thought was all I'd ever have. She'd wanted fame, control, a story she could spin. I'd wanted love, and when that broke, I found something stronger, purpose. I watched Geneva drive off, then turned back to the house, its lights still burning. The highway was far behind me now, and I wasn't looking back. I had a legacy to build, and I was just getting started.